And I am live. This is Jon Reed of Diginomica, and I've got Josh Greenbaum and Geoff Scott with me. And, we are here to make sense of SAP. The funny thing is, guys, I thought we kind of made sense of SAP in July, and now it's all falling apart again. This is how quickly these things move.
That's called what keeps this spicy. Yeah, full employment and keeps life spicy. Just when you thought you've got this under control, nope.
Yep. Yeah, and we don't have bots that are ready to handle these questions, so we are still safe from AI for a little while longer. And in July, we talked about clean core, just for listeners' interest if you want to go back. But now we're going forward. And what we're doing at the moment is we're at this interesting juxtaposition where we're recording, we have a Back to the Future thing going on because we have TechEd happening officially next week. This podcast will come out in the middle. We've all been briefed on TechEd. The NDAs will lift next week. So we're going to talk as if all the things have been announced. But keep in mind, we actually haven't seen the official keynotes and stuff like that yet. So, take that with a slight disclaimer. And also, a lot of stuff has changed. And so there's a few things. Geoff has had a massive series of events at ASUG because I've been watching you on LinkedIn. It's like every other day. You're like, get on the tarmac.
Hello,
somewhere.
Paris.
Yep, exactly. So you've got a lot of event insights. Josh, you've been digging in pretty deep into some interesting research that I want to talk to you about. And then I've been at a bunch of shows, including SAP's biggest competitors. So we're going to start with some kind of overall kind of lessons of what we've been learning from all of that. And then we're going to head into TechEd and then see kind of our reaction to that. And then the next final phase will be getting into ASUG Tech Connect and kind of what we're looking for there, perhaps in the context as well of enterprise architect themes, which are, I think, a really important part of some of this discussion. So anyhow, that's sort of the agenda that we are going to go through. One other thing that's obviously an elephant in the room that I'm just going to name now is that obviously Jürgen Mueller, who played a prominent role in TechEd in the past, is no longer with SAP. That happened fairly quickly. For those of you that are looking for a bunch of opinions about that departure and the context of that, that's not happening in this show. All of us have opinions on that, but we're not going there in this show. However, we will get into some stuff about kind of changing leadership in TechEd and community and some of those related topics. So that's the agenda for today. So with that in mind, I got some surprises for the two of you in terms of my event takeaways, which I think you're going to enjoy, but I don't want to start there. I want to start with you. So Geoff, you're the one who has been keeping LinkedIn well greased with event updates. So looking back now from all of those events, are there some themes that have really jumped out at you in terms of what the pulse of customers and ASUG members is right now?
I think,
and feel free to share any stories that illustrate that too.
Oh, absolutely. Because I just hate sharing, John, right? It's not in my nature. Couple really kind of important things. We queried some of our chapter meetings. I've been in a lot of chapter meetings over the past couple of weeks, and I love chapter meetings. We have 39 of them here in North America because it really gets you connected to what's happening in the local geographies and how they're really interpreting all these messages. And so it's always refreshing for me to kind of listen to what's going on, on the front line, so to speak, of the customer base. And we asked a question in one of the recent chapter meetings about how much do you believe that artificial intelligence, generative AI, will be a part of your enterprise architectures and part of your future go forward strategies, and how much will SAP be a part of that? And to almost to a T, everyone said that generative AI will be a massive part of our enterprise data strategy. Either they're mostly bought in or they were totally bought in. There was only like one or two who said not at all. And what was really upsetting about the ones that said not at all is I couldn't get them in the audience to actually say anything more than that. I'm like, I want to hear why you say not at all. And there's like crickets. But everyone else is on the other side of the spectrum, on the other side of the bell curve saying this.
Geoff,
is going to be
can I just ask real quick, what percentage would you say approximately were the not at all group?
Oh, it was a tiny percentage. It was maybe 2-3%.
Okay.
And I'm not giving up on them, John, because I'm going to keep asking this question. We got a lot of other stops to make in our fourth quarter popularity tour. And I think that I'm going to keep asking that question and see if I get others to say why not.
And just real quick on that, I think what's interesting about that is like, I could imagine certain folks being down on generative AI, but if you expanded that to include, do you care about having a data platform strategy? Do you care about having real-time analytics? Do you care about, making sense of your transactions and making better decisions? I would expect that number will get even smaller. So it'd be really interesting to find out exactly what the nature of that resistance is,
Yeah. So on this particular thing, there was a number who said they were skeptical, which I think was interesting. And then we said, the question was, how important do you think your SAP platform will be in achieving enterprise AI? That was one of the questions we asked. Most of them, 90%, 80%, were either somewhat important or extremely important, was where they landed. And then we asked them a follow-up question. And I'll come to the follow-up question in a second because it's not as relevant. So that's where they landed. And so when you think about that most of them recognize that this thing called AI or enterprise AI will have a significant impact on their SAP platforms, then you really have to come back to, this is my long-winded way back to your original question, then you have to be able to think about clean core. And you have to be able to think about, to me, there's like 4 major components of this. If you think that enterprise AI is going to be really important to you, it's got to be about clean core. It's got to be about cloud. It's got to be about moving as much ownership of code back to SAP, SASE, or SaaS-related stuff. And then finally, getting as much customization out of your systems as you possibly can. If you can achieve those 4 things, of which clean core kind of is a route through all of that, that to me is kind of the impetus of why you need to be thinking about these things. And so I've kind of been flipping the script a little bit, Jon, and instead of talking about why you should adopt RISE or GROW, really saying if your end state is to think about this modern enterprise AI-enabled landscape where you're using these AI tools to get the most out of your SAP investment, this is kind of what you're going to need to do. Now, this is not just an easy, hey, let's do this one afternoon on a Friday. We'll just whip this up and make it happen. This is a major undertaking for most businesses, but that might be the big why. Why would you want to do this? But that also necessitates master data management, archiving, all the other things that you would need to get your data lined up. And I think this is where we're going to see the most challenge around this as we talk about AI as this magical elixir. And to me, the problem is the data. The problem is the data. And if the data is not right, if the data is not accurate, you're very likely to get a lot of hallucinating happening. And I have heard that in some of the places I've been and other people, doing presentations, the importance of data. So
I need to jump in on this because this is.
I was doing so well, and now here we go.
Yeah. But
all right,
we know that we can trigger Josh with AI talk, so this is perfect. We've got him wound up already.
Josh, have I triggered you? I didn't mean to trigger you.
No,
I am so sorry.
No, and you've just intrigued me.
Uh-oh.
So no, here's the thing, Geoff, and I want to know if maybe I can add a nuance to that question next time you ask it, which is, how many of you in the room, hold up your hands, please, are looking at AI as Gen AI, Joule, that kind of thing, versus how many of you in the room think of AI as predictive AI, decision support AI, as things like Ariba guided buying or IBP? Because to me, I have to say, honestly, IDC did a survey I looked at recently that, 85%, blah, blah. This is, to me, unfortunately, a lot of this is sort of tail wagging the marketing dog. That the more SAP talks about this, the more people are going to be regurgitating this. And when I sit down with customers, and this is some of the research Jon was alluding to, and really dig into what do you think AI is, and they start with Gen AI and say, well, aren't you using planning? What about planning? What about global track and trace? What about these things you're already doing that are actually really good predictive AI that deliver real value? Isn't that business AI as well? And sometimes a light bulb goes off. Sometimes they look at me very quizzically. But so I think the problem with, because personally I don't see the business return in Gen AI. I don't see it happening in the next couple of years. Whereas I see huge returns on some of the AI that's intrinsic to the business network. Really great AI that's been working for years. So that's my soapbox.
Yes, I will begrudgingly, just to be sporting, agree with your point. I'm trying to test at the moment, and we as ASUG are you're asking what I think are some outstanding follow-on questions. I'm worried that we're still very much in a definitional phase, Josh, where if I jump too deep, the risk is we're going to confuse versus clarify. So I do think that when you look at some of these other solutions, like to your point, Success Factors or Reba or Concur, there's a lot of really good and, potentially AI helpers out there that can help you get stuff done. I mean, clearly one of the best things about AI, and it's not generative AI, is the fact that I can upload a receipt to my expense tracking software that we use at ASUG, and it will fill in all the fields for me. I mean, that's an outstanding use of AI. It's not terribly, it's not terribly new because it's been around for some time, right? And arguably, we've all as customers been using AI for a very, very long time. We're just calling it something different now, which is generative AI. I do happen to think,
but that is a different AI. That's really important.
It is a different AI, but it's the one that's it's the one that's caught all of everyone's attention, right?
Right.
It's the one we're all talking about, and it's the one that has been given the most promise without the realization of the distance required to travel to get there. That's where I think, when you go back to November of 2022 and ChatGPT and OpenAI come storming into the market, and we consumerize the technology, and everyone who is anyone says, well, why can't I do this inside my enterprise? Look how simple it is. And you're
Remember one click? Why can't I have one click in my enterprise?
Right.
Processes aren't simple. That's why you don't get one click.
Right. But everyone assumes they are.
Right.
So why can't I have it?
Yeah.
But it's the biggest, nattiest problem to solve, which is everyone wants generative AI, right? Everyone thinks that they can turn their SAP, architecture into a one-click, one-stop shop where I can type in some cute little phrase into a chat bot and receive back thousands of insightful answers. And I don't think that that's in the near-term solution.
And I don't
John,
think
you've been trying to say something.
Gen AI solves my supply chain problem of where's my stuff and how do I get different stuff to my customer before I lose that contract. That's
you do or don't.
I don't think so. No, that's not a Gen AI problem. That's a predictive analytics problem.
So just real quick on a couple of things.
He's trying to
here
we
go. Well, I do, because I don't want to have an hour-long AI discussion along these lines. So I think we've given users a flavor for how we could consume the next hour of our time, but I don't want to do that. But I want to point out
trouble.
I'm gonna bring the whip a little bit. I want to point out a few different things. AI and classical AI you're referring to in Gen AI are not completely different, because they all derive from a field of AI called deep learning. And basically all of this technology is somewhat probabilistic in nature. The difference between the use cases you're describing, Josh, is there's more maturity in those, and they're more embedded in solutions, and so they're delivering better results. Generative AI, for example, I talked with some customers launching some generative AI projects very early days this fall. And so that's the difference, is that the return on value can't be there just yet in most cases. And so it's a tricky discussion to have, because customers have very pressing business problems that you referred to. So that's kind of what's going on. Now, I think the reason that generative AI, there's a high interest level in that topic specifically, is because there's quite a lot of pressure on executives to be able to articulate what the narrative around it is, because there's a big consumer adoption factor with generative AI in the way that it tends to make interacting with data more accessible and easier. And so there's a lot of light bulbs are going off around that. So just in terms of kind of framing things, I think that's sort of where we stand. But one of the other overriding things is that customers have a lot on their minds besides AI. And so vendors so far this fall have made two mistakes, in my opinion. One is they have overplayed their hand with AI in general, where customers are already bought in, as Geoff described. So they're selling it too much when customers are already in evaluation mode. So that's pretty silly. And secondly, they're overlooking a lot of amazing, cool things that customers can do right now that may not touch on AI at all, like whatever version of AI. And so I want to get back to Geoff's recap for a moment here before we move on to TechEd, because this is the other thing I'm interested in, Geoff, is if AI and Gen AI were kind of the headline concern, what are a couple of the big undercard concerns? I mean, obviously, S/4HANA migrations is going to be one that lingers. Like for me, in the shows that I went to, which were non-SAP shows, cybersecurity was clearly the undercard, and talking with customers about managing that and incidents that they were dealing with was one of the, and obviously that's not a big surprise, but what were the other things? Was there a surprise? Were there a couple of other themes that really jumped out at you that really struck you besides the AI interest?
let me come back to, if I might, John, I want to put a pin in your, because I think I owe you some data. You originally opened up with a data question, and I have some data for
great.
you. So we did some research back in February, which seems like a long time ago, but it really isn't. Familiarity, let me get this word out in an afternoon. Familiarity, still not quite good, with clean core concept has risen dramatically over the last year. 53% of the customers surveyed were aware or extremely somewhat familiar, compared to 32% in 2023. So that number has shot up dramatically. So while we all might be somewhat clean core dubious, or clean core concerned, or clean core skeptics, the understanding of that is increasing amongst the customer base. When asked, when SAP refers to maintaining a clean core, what does this concept mean? 52 selected running the entire business on a standard instance with a minimum of custom code running alongside standard software. So that's pretty good. 52% said that. 30% selected running the entire business on a standard instance with no modifications and customizations. So it looks like we're hunting in the right woods, right? That people are starting to, and customers are starting to embrace this notion that in this future world, standard wins because I can get to innovation faster, right? One of the things that I did also ask across the chapters, and this has been something that's plagued us for a community for a long time. While we talk about innovation, most of us are trapped in the lights on model of the current state, right? I would love to do innovation, but I can't get rid of all the emails I'm getting every day giving me fabulous performance reviews on how well I'm getting all this data out of my SAP investment. A little snarkiness for me in the afternoon. But this community does want to get to innovation. They do want to be able to figure out how to unlock these features and functions faster. And they understand that if they are wandering away from standard, they can't get there. And so I'm going to couple that with some other research, right? We did some research on custom code. Nearly 95% of organizations build and run custom ABAP code to the extent SAP software doesn't support it. So 95%, not a surprise when you think about it, of all customers are running some degree of customized code. And that's a big number. So there is a lot of custom code out there, which we might call, this really nice, factor of technical debt that has to be unwound. So I think we understand where the end state is, understanding that it's going to take us some time to get there.
If I can jump in, to me, the custom code issue is, and this is part of the research I've been doing, I think that, and the clean core issue, I think you're absolutely right. I think that the message about clean core is starting to sink in. And I think that, the customers are really starting to have that nuanced view that in order to get to innovation, I have to have clean core, which is sort of antithetical to how we looked at R3 and ECC, which is I'm going to start with this general purpose tool and then customize the hell out of it to get to where I need to innovate. But to me, and this is part of what's fascinating about this, when you dig, SAP is always, an onion. You just have to keep peeling the layers, finding out, what's
to get to the clean core, Josh. You peel the layers.
Well, it's never that
to
clean.
Get to that juicy, clean.
Usually, you're crying by the time you're, down a few layers deep. The problem, so you're absolutely right. I was going to mention, by the time we broadcast this, I've done a webinar with a couple of partners, one of which is Smart Shift, who did some research.
Tremendous.
Yeah. And the other basis. And we, one of the things that Smart Shift folks, like to talk about is the fact that according to their research, your research, this need for custom code has only grown year over year. It's not shrinking. And the question then is, what do we call custom code? And it's not so much, are we going to do it, but do we need it? Well, we need it because the industry specifics are not there in the standard. We need to do this kind of connectivity with non-SAP systems. There's a lot of whole good reasons for it. And what has emerged in my digging, very carefully, is that, there's going to always be this requirement for doing things outside of the clean core. You do them in BTP as a side-by-side app. You do them on stack inside S/4HANA. That never goes away. And I think the next level of what is clean core is to really make that understanding clear, that you've got to be clean core in order to innovate. But a lot of times innovation is still going to be about writing something for yourself. That isn't,
but in a different kind of way, because you can't be doing on stack stuff that disqualifies you from future upgrades. So services partners
can. It's just that you're going to get yourself in trouble.
Well, right.
How much trouble
it defeats the entire purpose of the modern software environment Geoff is describing if you don't do it in a way that is much more in collaboration with SAP and partners around conforming to that strategy and making sure that when you upgrade, this shit doesn't break and it doesn't take you months to test it and regression test every single time. So whether you do it on stack or not, you still have to start paying more attention to that. Hello, services partners, wake up call, alarm bells going off. Sorry, Geoff, you were going to say something.
I don't believe that saying I'm going to eliminate all customizations, which is a nice destination but largely impractical for every customer, and clean core are diametrically opposed. All clean core suggests is when you write those customizations, you write them in such a way that they can be managed and maintained over time. So if you're going to put those customizations directly into your cloud ERP solution, that's not a clean core answer. I do think that there's a little bit of...
Well, there is a way to do that on stack that is clean.
Right. I do believe that there's the note. Clean core is a destination. It's an ideal. It's not something that most customers can achieve tomorrow, right? And so I think that and there's some things about clean core that I'm not so sure I buy into, and I would like there to be a more customer and SAP aligned definition of clean core versus SAP's only definition of clean core, which seems to be moving around a little bit. So as an example, if you're running old SAP GUI, which so many customers are, Fiori is considered clean core. SAP legacy GUI is not. Right. And yet, to me, that seems weird, right? I mean, I understand the notion, but most customers are not tomorrow going to go out and implement Fiori top to bottom across their enterprises.
Don't take my GUI away.
Don't take
my GUI away from me. Who moved my cheese?
Mama, don't take my Kodachrome away. Are we going back to an old Paul Simon song?
I want to temporarily park a couple of topics, Josh. I want to temporarily park your clean core BTP thing to get back to in the TechEd thing we're going to get to in a minute. Geoff, I want to park your thing around clean core.
Let me unmute.
Discussions for the Tech Connect preview I want to do because it's precisely, I think, along the lines of what I'm going to say, which is we need these discussions to happen outside of a sales context. And so that's why people don't push back on clean core because they feel like it's part of a sales pitch, but it's actually part of a technical debt management sensibility that I think we need to have. So we're going to get back to that in the context of Tech Connect, where hopefully those kinds of discussions can happen. But before we go to TechEd, I just want to share with you all my quick rundown of my takeaways from events so far.
You need a drum roll or some sort of build music to that, John.
I have crickets. That probably isn't what I...
No,
that wasn't what I was thinking initially. But
don't do it.
You need some sort of trumpet flare. Dun, dun, dun,
yeah,
dun,
I don't have trumpets. Okay, so I'm just going to give you my top four, and then we can move into TechEd. So my top four from the events I've attended so far. Number one, vendors are overhyping AI agents to the point of absurdity. One of the aspects I'll point out there is that AI agents are not new. So, for example, Uber is powered by agents. So is Lyft. A lot of our apps do that. So it's like, okay, so what's new about agents exactly? Well, there's a lot of complex decision-making and reasoning BS coming out right now. And a lot of it I view as kicking the cans down the road, which really surprised me because a lot of customers are doing cool things right now. So why are we spending so much time overselling AI? I don't know why. Number two, enterprise architecture matters for better output and results, but how much? So there's so many innovations going on around smaller models, RAG, foundation models, industry LLMs, knowledge graphs, which we're going to get to in TechEd. Number three, customer data matters for better AI, but how much? We're going to find out. And assuming that we do automate more things, what are we going to do with our automation dividend, and why aren't we talking about that? So much of the emphasis on AI feels very mechanistic and automated, and it doesn't feel human-centric and empowering. So what is our future of work message? And then that leads to my fourth takeaway, which is human team collaboration and process changes is the underrated story here. A lot of companies are trying to look at AI as a solution to bad processes. That's not going to work. It doesn't save you from bad processes. It can't clean all your crappy data, although it can help a little bit, and that's getting a little better. So how are we going to get more out of that investment that we've made in our human teams and process changes as well? So those are my big takeaways from events so far. And if you have a quick comment, we can get to that, but I wanted to kind of frame that up for our TechEd discussion. Geoff, your comment.
More of a question for you, John. I mean, I tend to think I spend way too much time inside the SAP house, and sometimes the air gets a little stale. So when you're out, examining the whole world and out in the mountains and the valleys and the cold of everything outside of SAP, anything that you're seeing that you think is remarkably different from the dialogue we've been having inside the walls of SAP?
Honestly, not so much, because everyone's kind of struggling with the same set of problems. Everyone's, when you look at the large enterprise, for example, there's, the same integration challenges and the same desire to modernize and serve customers better. I think the same underlying stressors around macroeconomic concerns that we're all dealing with, and the same uncertainties. But it is certainly interesting to see, like, every vendor does have some different strengths and weaknesses and pros and cons to their approach. For the most part, vendors are trying to be very responsible with how they're approaching the use of customer data. But there are some interesting nuances. And, for example, I happen to think that some of SAP's competitors have a better answer around pricing and AI than SAP does. But then SAP has other strengths that some of those other vendors don't have. So there's a lot of variation on some of the fine print that is interesting. Josh, you wanted to say something?
I think the fundamental difference, because I do float around outside the bubble too from time to time, is it's really still hard to get SAP to talk about non-SAP landscapes, non-SAP integration, and name names and really go direct to the customer's problem. So it's always very oblique. Yeah, we have integration, we do that. We have a million APIs, we do that. But I think when I look, at least my take from the outside looking in, the big competitors are much more open to that still. I would say, CX Live is a good example of that inward facing view that SAP maintains, to its detriment, in my opinion. I think they really have the chops to be able to talk about serving a more heterogeneous customer base, which is who your members are, who's everybody, everybody. It's wall-to-wall SAP is kind of hard to find. So I would say the one big difference I see is there's a lot more ability to talk about
and some of that is a messaging difference as well, right? No, because a lot of that is stuff that SAP can do, but they tend to emphasize other things.
They do a great job,
but
they do a better job than anyone else. I think. I don't think anyone else does a better job serving opportunity. I think they just don't market it that way.
I think that the AI conversation needs to be about how artificial intelligence, whether it's generative AI or the other definite flavors of it, can help us make better decisions, faster decisions, more holistic decisions. It's not going to be a massive replacement of human capital. I'm reading a book right now. It's a fascinating book by Nate Silver. He talks a lot about poker, and he's part of the New York Times and 538. And, the comment that was made in this book that really struck me is they did studies of high velocity Wall Street traders, right? And they looked at them and they were trying to manage their body chemistry. And what they learned is the way that they approach risk, their body chemistry, their testosterone levels heightening, their dopamine levels heightening, actually helps them make better decisions instead of make worse decisions. That part of that ability to just rely on your gut instinct sometimes really helps in the decision-making process. And what that was like in ... no AI tool can replace body chemistry. And I thought to myself, that's an interesting thing that I never thought about. We discount that. But going back to our, early caveman days, when you either got a fight or flight, there's a lot of body chemistry involved in that. And you're making high velocity decisions very, very quickly. And there's no AI that can replicate that.
And
Danny can make scientific answers.
Yeah. Danny Kahneman would say, but we make really bad gut calls.
We can sometimes make really bad gut calls, but our legacy has been also been based on making really good gut calls.
Agreed.
Again, coming back to my premise that I think these tools and technologies can do an awesome job of helping us be better decision makers, but we keep going to this replacement methodology that they'll replace us, and I just don't see it.
Yeah, but you will see messaging that implies that, and that's one of the
and I think it's a mistake.
That's one of the problems with the AI agent emphasis is that it's an overemphasis on automation, and I think it's a misread of what customers are looking to hear right now, which is how can we help you, like you said, Geoff, do your job better, make better decisions, things like that. And in terms of Daniel Kahneman is very interesting because the AI of today is really best equipped to help with those quick decisions by being another reliable voice of hopefully trusted information that you can utilize in those decisions. The type of AI that would help with the longer, more sophisticated planning functions of the second type of slower thinking doesn't exist yet fully, and that's what a lot of AI scientists are interested in that are not part of the enterprise discussion. But that's a whole other topic. So, okay, so this
how
was
many
good.
of us have had a wonderful interaction with a chat bot that we've gone, oh my God, that was so amazing. I'm glad I didn't talk to a human. Or how many of us are in the middle of a chat bot, please escape me out of this hell?
Agent.
Well,
Agent.
yeah. Well, it was funny too because I was making fun of a projection by a vendor that said 80% of support deliveries are going to be handled by bots completely, like resolved. And they didn't have a projection, I don't think, in terms of years, but I was like, I don't even think I'm at 1% yet. And you're saying 80? Like, let's get to 5% and then get back with me. But a lot of the framing, and I've written about this on Diginomica, is around productivity, which I think is totally the wrong framing. It's a mechanistic, disempowering framing. And in fact, as Josh knows, IT's impact on productivity is highly questionable in many cases. In the first place, it's very hard to overcome. So, all right, I want to revisit some of those topics, but we'll get to it in the context of TechEd because we now have on our plate a typical SAP news guide with way too many news stories for us to possibly deconstruct. But we've also had some briefings, and I will say I think SAP did a nice job this week of some good back and forth on their announcements, so I enjoyed that. What's your takeaways, folks? What do you think is going to be interesting in terms of TechEd news developments? What's on your mind?
Geoff, go first.
My God, there's just like silence. Like,
right, I'm going to say something mean, so you go first.
Oh, Josh.
No, I'm not going to say that. Okay, honestly, here's what I'm excited about, and I want to be kind because I really mean it. I think the growing importance of SAP Build and the ability of SAP to really drive a better experience around getting this stuff right and getting this stuff implemented. And using some of the inherent technology that SAP has around, around this kind of these fundamentals of apps, extensions, workflows, automations, digital, that's really good. I like the story. I like the fact that they're putting a lot of thought into this. I think it's getting a little complicated out there. Geoff and you and I talked about this the other day. The toolbox is starting to get all heavy, and
a lot of tools.
A lot of tools in there, but there's a really good focus on some of the stuff you're just talking about: collaboration, team development. I like it. I think it begs this question of how do I build extensions? Wind me up, and I'll give you a long lecture on that. But I think there's still some complexity about balance, clean code extensions. But the tools are there to make some smart choices.
Can I add one very quick thing too, which is that I think SAP is continuing, like as far as real positives, is continuing its history of honoring the ABAP investments customers have made. So SAP Build now includes an ABAP framework. They have an ABAP LLM announcement coming. So I really like that SAP has taken those ABAP investments really seriously, because there were a few years there where they were kind of flirting with web languages, and we kind of lost track of ABAP just a little bit in terms of the future. So I think that's really smart. They've done a good job with that.
Yeah.
So enough about technical debt. Let's talk about the amazing changes and the updates we're making to ABAP and your ability to code it.
There you go. Well, it sounds like you're all ready for TechEd, man.
Josh is choking.
I'm choked. I'm all choked up.
I take two things away. The first one is we've always said that this whole thing of AI is the worst it's ever going to be. And I think we continue to see that it's getting better and better every time. And the tool set is getting more sophisticated and it's getting better and better at being able to do things we need it to do. So I think that's a massive thumbs up. I think that one of the hidden gems in BTP is the ability for you to be able to play around with multiple LLMs. And I don't hear us talking about this enough, and I think this is very interesting. I can get into a BTP environment and I can play around with a number of different LLMs and figure out which ones of those are going to help me get to the results I need from a business perspective without having to go out and independently contract with every single one of them. And in the announcements that SAP is making as part of TechEd, they're announcing a broader range of LLMs you can tap into. And I think that's absolutely, positively the right way to go. I think that's super cool. So, those things together, I think are reasons why there's a lot to really like about TechEd. And then obviously there are the obligatory use cases and those types of things. The one area where I still think we need to do better, where SAP can do better, where the partners can do better, where we as customers need to drive more and demand more, is how we're going to use these AI tools to help us get to the next generation of software faster, more predictably, with higher qualities, less time and less cost. So how can we use these tools to tell us where we can take technical debt out, remove customizations, help us understand that our data gets mapped into the new environments correctly, automate testing so that we don't have to rely on people to tell us looks good until we migrate and it doesn't, right? So how can we use these tools to help IT deliver a better product faster?
I have to jump in on that because I actually, this is something I gave a talk to Philip Herzig and his team recently about.
And who's Philip?
Mr. Herzig.
Chief AI.
AI officer.
Right. Chief AI officer. And that was interesting because, Geoff, you and I think alike. I mean, I said, you want a moonshot that's really going to be the killer, one of the killer cases for your great AI tool set? Go after implementation problems. Go after these questions about how do I do a better job? We know actually one of the things that LLMs do a pretty decent job with is coding. That it's a much more objective, definitive, declarative world. And I think there's a growing sort of AI ops mentality, and I would really love to see SAP out in front of this a little bit more. Because I think there's a great opportunity. The business transformation suite and that tool set already does a decent job of sort of thinking that way. There's some great data. You're not going to get crap data out of it. It's the data model is it's a small language model in a sense. It's there to. So I think that's hopefully something we're going to see soon because I think it's a great opportunity.
Let me throw a bunch of quick bullets out at you guys that I took from the briefings, and you can comment on the ones you want to. I thought. Some of the people coming into the call, I think, have wildly overhyped notion of automating code with AI. And I thought, I believe it was Herzig on one of our calls that was I think much more reasonable because they asked how much benefit can we really expect, and he said, up to like around 30%, which is a much more reasonable, I think, and sober understanding of like the complexities of enterprise grade development. It's not some 100x kind of miracle cure that we see on X all the time. And so I applaud SAP for sharing real like data on that and not hyping it up too much. The other thing is that SAP committed to Joule, the interactive copilot, into 80% of all the main transactions, 80%, the main ones by the end of the year. So that's going to be interesting to watch in the context of next year as more customers get experience with the product. When I asked the question about in one of the calls around, I actually asked it today in the tech call around just that question around the use of AI tooling around implementation and migration. I'm getting at least decent answers for SAP that they're looking at that and looking at how to apply that. I'd like to hear even more details, but things that were discussed included things like the improved RISE methodology around automating some of that, which refers to the business transformation toolkit that you're talking about, Josh, as well as ABAP Copilot. SAP is like getting better answers than I had a year ago to that question, but there's a lot more to do there. But AI is pretty good at some of the stuff around pattern recognition. And so it, identifying problem code and things like that, that's stuff that you can sick AI on. And so hopefully we'll hear more about that. So those are some of the things that that jumped out at me from the announcements. I mean, there's like I said, there's like a 14, 15 page briefing book. So it'll be interesting. There was some interesting chat around like agents talking with other agents, and they already announced bidirectional integration with Microsoft Copilot. But customers aren't going to want to hear with this automated stuff like, oh, sorry, but we hit a wall because some of the data is in Salesforce or some of the data is somewhere else. They just want the processes to work. So are these agents going to be able to talk to each other, and how is that going to work? And so it'll be really interesting to see if they get into some of those details during their announcements this week.
Hey, John, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Can AI bots generate technical debt?
Well, they can generate bad code.
Process debt.
So yeah.
They are process debt. They're bad.
I was trying to be funny, and that landed really badly.
Because we take you too seriously.
Sorry.
A conversation about AI can inherit technical debt very quickly. I can tell you that. I don't know if that counts.
A couple things about this, that I think are also worth mentioning. Number one is I don't think SAP is being as clear as it needs to be about where you need to be in the software stack in order to take advantage of these various different AI tools. So, finally, Josh, are you finally agreeing with me today? You're going to jump with me, not on me over something?
Oh, my man,
I've won.
Throw you on my back and we're both going to jump off.
I've won. You need to be pretty far down the stack or pretty current on the stack to take advantage of some of this. And I fear that most of our customers are not, or most of the community is not as far along as SAP says. With that said, I know SAP does plan to downport these things further down, but they're playing true to their comment that they said a while ago that these innovations are first going to be available in those running the latest version of software, which we understand, right? And it makes perfect sense. But how do you get us there faster?
They're not downporting all of it, though. I can tell you in the press conference today, there was very strong talk again from Herzig, and I've published stuff on this in the past, how cloud and AI is very connected in AI's and SAP's view of the world. It's not like if you're not on the latest, you won't be able to do anything. But the way that SAP is handling AI is really tied to their, especially Gen AI, is really tied to their cloud releases and their Rise and Grow initiatives. And look no further than the way they're pricing a lot of that. Now, not all of their AI will cost additional price, but when it does, it will come out of credits. And my understanding is that credit system is tracked within Rise and Grow. If I'm wrong, SAP, let me know, but that's my understanding. So the one thing I will say is that this week we did hear more that satisfied me that they are going to do more, like for on-premise customers, around updating functionality, and they will do that where they can. They're just saying that with a lot of AI stuff, it's not going to be that way. Now, there are some exceptions, like through BTP, you can do some cool stuff. You can access a Gen AI hub, for example, through BTP. But it's going to be very interesting for SAP because, Jeff, to some extent, they are gambling a little bit on their strategy. So I'll just give you one example. I was listening to a webinar from Cohere, which is a pretty interesting enterprise LLM player, and they're more than happy to step into an on-premise customer and customize a language model for them and their purposes and stuff like that. So, and they're not the only one. They're just, I mean, Josh, you documented you documented like a whole slide presentation about this kind of stuff. So it's going to be an interesting thing because SAP is kind of saying the future is cloud and AI, and I think that's right to a large extent. But then there's also customers that can do cool AI stuff if they have quality data, even if they're running on-prem systems. So it's going to be fascinating to see how this plays out.
And it's more importantly, it's going to be a question of how creative can you be as a customer, particularly a customer like a lot of your members, Jeff, who are running very complex systems and they're just not going to migrate wholesale to S/4HANA Cloud tomorrow. And there are a lot of ways to build sidecar S/4HANA on systems that give you access to AI features. The problem, and I've discussed this with people all up and down the executive team at SAP. The problem is that Rise is being a little too restrictive in how it's what it's saying to customers who have complex landscapes and can't move tomorrow to full bore on, on-premise, cloud systems. If SAP doesn't loosen it up, these things up, it's got everybody, IBM and your Cohere folks, really glad to do this for SAP. What's more important is there are customers today who are building these hub and spoke systems, who are building these complex hybrid systems that have ECC, that have old S4HANA, that have modern public and private edition S4HANA, and are running AI. You can do it. You can get innovation. You have to be creative, and SAP has to let you be creative. And this is my biggest beef with RISE right now, is it's still being too restrictive in how and not allowing customers to be, and their account executives to be creative about how do you bring innovation in without having to be wall-to-wall cloud, because that's just not possible for a lot of customers.
Right. And just very quickly, those who have listened to every single one of our podcasts know how much I've hammered us. Yeah. And there is a support program for that, by the way. But I know how much I've hammered SAP on this point. I'm hearing some improved messaging on this topic. I just want to say that. Like, I'm seeing some improved messaging. I'm having some better dialogue on these issues with SAP product leadership as well. Now, I don't think they've solved this, and they have some strong positions. And in some cases, like with Herzig, I give him credit for being very clear and not mincing words, because if that's how SAP really feels about some of that, then they should make that abundantly clear. So I want to reward that also, but I don't want to throw SAP under the bus for keynotes that haven't happened yet. So let's see how they handle this next week. This will be another crack at the plate for them to have an inclusive message that gives, what we're really talking about is giving customers a chance to experiment with cool stuff without making massive moves, and then build some momentum on their innovation projects, and then look at bigger moves if they're not ready to move yet. And that's really what I'm looking at from SAP for. So.
I just think they're, John, to your point, and let me plus one this, clear disclosure about the software revs you need to be on in order to use this. So don't dangle in front of me a bunch of shiny objects that I go ooh ah at, just for me to do another couple hours of research to go, gosh darn it, I can't take advantage of that because I need to be here and I'm there.
And then turn around and say, let me show you a creative way to get you at least partway there.
Right.
Today.
And creative ways include, for example, you can access the Gen AI Hub through BTP, or alternately the public cloud sidecar innovation thing, which Josh and I are more enthusiastic about than I think SAP is at the moment, but I think that's also a possibility in some cases. And so there are creative ways of doing that. And so a lot of it is how you include, all of this into how you frame these issues with your customers to let them know that you have access to this now. And what I don't want is the classic way of doing this, which is work it out with your account exec. That's not going to work. You need to have public messaging around how to do this.
Right.
Yeah. The other thing I would put a flashing yellow light on is, as we move all of this to BTP is a transaction engine that charges to most customers based on the transaction. And that's a massive departure from how most customers have run integration and some of these other things. And so I'm starting to hear a lot of concern being raised by customers that they feel that the cost of running this through a BTP engine far outweighs the benefit, or they're staggered to find out how much some of this is really going to cost them to run. So we haven't gotten into today licensing and costing and business case. But the other thing that kind of comes out of this is all of these are amazing. They're amazing innovations until you say, how much is this going to cost? And you compare that against the budget you have, and you go, oh, goodness gracious, we are way out of line. We tend to think all of this is free, or would like it to be free, and it is not. And that's where I'm going to throw some caution up, that we need to do some, as customers, some fairly careful budget and cost benefit analysis, and make sure that what we're doing and what we're developing is actually affordable.
One of the things I liked about, I've been critical of SAP's pricing on AI versus its competitors, and I'm not going to change that. But the one thing I did like, though, is when Herzig was talking about it this week, he talked about how when they do have pricing for AI, there'll be times where it's included, but when it's not, they're going to also project what the business outcome to expect from that is. And I like that kind of thinking. Now, that's sometimes going to be tricky to realize, but it gets a little bit to your point, Geoff, which is the stuff is not cheap. Now, there's a lot of things being done to reduce the cost of it, and that's a longer conversation, including smaller models and different elaborate technical things that make more efficiencies in how models run. But the point is, it's expensive, and someone's got to pay for that. But if you're getting an ROI around it, that's a big positive. Then there's, of course, the ESG and sustainability considerations. But okay, so here's the interesting thing: is that we're going to have this flood of TechEd news, and then TechEd Bangalore is obviously going to happen. But I think for a lot of folks, what's going to happen is that they're going to need to then process the news. Because Geoff, you just raised some points that I don't think are going to get answered in the virtual sessions next week, because they're nuanced points around how do I absorb this functionality. Well, it just so happens there's an event coming up, ASUG Tech Connect, where we can come and ask questions like that, and you better have the answers. No, I'm just kidding about that last
Me
part.
personally?
But anyway, I think it's interesting. It's interesting to think about that, because I think there's a broader conversation beyond just Tech Connect, which is that TechEd really used to be a community-centric event, and now, and don't worry, I'm not about to get arrested.
I was wondering what was happening in the background, John.
Yeah, I would have muted out, but I'm talking.
What's really weird is there's one going on behind me too. I don't know if you can hear that. They're coming from.
I keep hearing it, and it's in stereo in my headphones. I'm like, uh-oh.
I hope it doesn't have to do with the NDA I signed for this other vendor last week. Okay. Anyway, so there's a whole community conversation, because so much, I think, of the benefit of making sense of this happens in a community context on the ground. And then I think that spills over into wonderful virtual interactions as well. But we need to meet in order to make sense of all of this. And so we could have a much longer conversation around how to foster that community amongst developers and everything else. But I'm thinking in particular about Tech Connect and the goals for this year. And seriously, Geoff, are we going to be able to come to Tech Connect and have heart-to-hearts about these kinds of issues? And what are we going to learn? How are we going to answer these questions?
John, I absolutely hope so, because that's what Tech Connect is here to do. It's here to make sure that we can have these face-to-face conversations, we can have honest dialogue, we can learn from each other. And I think, what SAP is going to do virtually is incredibly important. But I think as human species, we need the ability to talk to one another, bounce ideas off of one another, be part of a community. The ASUG bedrock pillars of connect, learn, grow, right? And you can't connect. I don't think you can connect adequately online. Yeah, you can do some of it, but that ability to have these conversations, in sessions, outside of sessions, in the evening is unparalleled. So I think the combination of everything that SAP is going to provide at TechEd online, coupled with what we're going to do in West Palm Beach, Florida, November 12th through the 14th, is essential. And I think you made a really good point. You're going to see this, at TechEd, take a couple weeks to digest it, and then you can go and do something in person. Registration and interest is sky high. We're already well past where we started last year, so that's encouraging. And I can't think of a better place to go to get, real answers from your peers, from SAP and the partner community. And by the way, I think both of you are going to be there. So, I would encourage our listeners to hunt both of you down and ask some of these questions. Josh, not so much from you, because you're just, you start on these tirades.
I'm going to just talk about how much I hate AI. I'm going
to walk up to say, hey, Josh, let's talk about AI. And it's going to be like,
No, but
run
Josh,
away.
Let's talk about enterprise architects.
Let's talk about enterprise architects.
I want to get to that in just a sec. But you can jump into that, Geoff.
What am I missing anything on Tech Connect? Because both of you have been huge advocates as well. So this notion of getting back to pure community. One of the things that I heard over and over again last year when we did Tech Connect version 1 in New Orleans was, this feels like what I remember TechEd used to be. And people were so thankful that we invited them in and they could get back to that. And so we're trying to recreate that again this year. We're very conscientious about that. The team has done a tremendous job on it. So I think there's a lot of upside, and it's at a time of year where you can use it to wrap up 2024 and be ready for 2024.
And get ready. Yeah. So do this before the quarter's over. And I think you're setting a nice table, for these conversations. I mean, looking at the the sort of the topic areas, application development, automation, analytics, architecting, business transformation. I mean, system operation. This is the meat and potatoes of how do you translate, software.
I want to get to enterprise architects for our final.
He's like, never mind.
Yeah.
Just
I want to get to that in the final section, but before that, I want to tell Geoff what my expectations are. I'm putting on my customer hat, although technically I'm not totally an SAP customer unless you want to count TripIt, which is part of Concur.
Yeah, I have to use Ariba. That must be a customer.
Yeah, I am a paid TripIt customer. So, okay, here's what I expect putting on my customer hat, Geoff. You can tell me if you think you're going to be able to deliver on this. Provide expert peer guidance and data on S/4HANA migrations, which includes industry stories, skills, resource planning, partner selection, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Help me place S/4HANA and SAP priorities into my industry-specific transformation, because some of these migrations are more technical, but I need to understand where my industry is headed and what my peers are thinking about.
Sort of, but there's something else that's happening in 2 weeks that's better at that than what you just described.
ASUG Best Practices event,
yes.
Right? Yep. Okay. Help companies understand SAP's AI and innovation strategy and access costs to that innovation, because innovation access will vary based on my software footprint.
Absolutely, yes.
Provide a broader context to AI readiness, how members are preparing for AI and building use case momentum both inside and outside of SAP, given this is a generational shift in how employees approach work and automation.
Yes.
I like the hesitancy there. It's like, we better double down on that one.
Huge sentence. It wasn't like 3 words.
All right.
It was like a paragraph.
I threw you for a loop then. You say it. That's a strong yes then.
That's a strong yes, John.
Okay. Despite my verbiage. Okay, cool.
And I'm going to say, Geoff, I'm just sort of scrolling here, looking at the agenda, right? There's a lot of really good customer stories too. I mean, you don't sell short the notion that you can't talk. You're not going to be talking about industry specific requirements. You got Dow Chemical, you got PepsiCo, you got
sounds like
NVIDIA.
industries.
You guys are turning this into a commercial or an
No.
No. I'm trying to hit on.
We got to justify why we're going.
Well. Also, these questions could be used for anyone who goes to any SAP event, not just right. Tech Connect. So I'm trying to share something of deeper value, Geoff. Come on. Okay, one more, and then we're going to go into enterprise architects, because this is where I'm leading you. ASUG Tech Connect, providing the tech leadership and vision to help members network and adapt to all of this, including SAP's strong talk about enterprise architect commitments, and also clean core methodologies are of strong interest, but outside of a sales context. Are we going to be able to get that?
Emphatically, yes.
Woohoo! Emphatic yes. Okay. So
both of you have also been involved in the planning of this event. Both of you have been asked, and you've been participating with the ASUG teams on content selection and content architectures and all that stuff. So the good news is, if I've misspoken, I'm going to blame the both of you.
Oh, throw us under the bus. Okay,
of course. And I'm going to go run for the hills.
I love it. But I want to talk about enterprise architects. We've covered off clean core really nicely. We had a whole podcast on that, and I think we're eventually going to do one on enterprise architects as well. But I just wanted to throw this over to Josh first, and then to you, Geoff. Why is enterprise architect as a role and as a topic really coming up again and again in all these conversations? Why do we need to bear down on this one?
Well, obviously it starts with, it started before this, but the imperative is really come to the fore lately, because this is what Tom Zawarczyk has been promising us, as has Christian Klein from the podium, from the in front of the industry, in front of the financial analyst community. They are going to put an enterprise architect in every pot. Every customer is going to get one. I'm not sure how that's going to work. I have a lot of questions about it, but the fundamental issue of how do you translate both the business opportunity and the enormous amount of technical complexity into something that actually works both as a clean core and as an innovation center for your company, that's hard. And you're going to need, I think this role, and it's a Geoff, you and I have talked about this just recently. John, you and I have talked about this extensively. It's complicated because enterprise architect as a persona is all over the map. But the notion that there is this translation job that needs to be happening, that you called Geoff, you called the other day the keeper of the toolkit. I think we need to be able to anchor all this goodness that SAP is providing, this overabundance, quite frankly, of stuff, and into a set of capabilities that then are used to very consciously and comprehensively translate the needs of the business into an actual working system. Because this is just more difficult, more complex, more dynamic than it's ever been. And I like the idea that SAP is focusing on this persona as sort of a North Star, if you will. Like I said, I'm a little confused about who those people really are, where the skills are going to come from, and how we're going to align and do that alignment. Because boy, there's a lot of moving parts to aligning business to technology needs. A lot.
It's a really complicated job these days, right, Josh, to be an enterprise architect. And it's not getting simpler. The architectures are not going to be any clearer or conciser as we go forward, right? So to me, I think that those folks who call themselves enterprise architects in today's world have a huge job in front of them. And trying to understand and synthesize all of this and trying to come up with, some sort of sense of assembly of order and coherence. Jon, you pointed out earlier, right, that, we have data all over the place in various different apps. I mean, one of the things that I worry about is everyone has an AI solution to everything. So we're not in an arena where you get to clarity. If everyone has their own AI and everyone's trying to wall off and silo data all over the place, and you as an enterprise want to get to one specific coherent source of truth across multiple different apps with different structures and different everything, and the enterprise architect is in the epicenter of that is a huge job. And so I think they need all the help they can get to kind of navigate that.
Agreed. So, Geoff, you've accused me of over marketing ASUG Tech Connect. So this question is directed to the conference, but it can also be interpreted in a more broader way, which is, we could spend a whole lot of time navel-gazing at a show like that over how do we even define this role. There's so many different versions of this role at different companies, and what does this mean to your project? How can we have some productive discussions about that at an event like this, but avoid getting too bogged down in that so that we're not really also figuring out how to take stuff home that we can use? Like, how are we going to balance that?
So I was madly texting some members of my team while we were kind of doing this conversation because a light bulb went off in my head, and I wanted to make sure that a couple of the key players from SAP who have responsibility and accountability for the enterprise architecture, competency inside of SAP will be at ASUG Tech Connect. And the team is telling me they're supposed to be there, yes. And they're going to verify that they actually have purchased their airline tickets to be there. So my intention is non-refundable one-way tickets. We're here as long as you need us for.
Excellent.
With the intention that I think this is where some of these conversations can occur. I think that SAP, let me separate out two things. What SAP is doing around around enterprise architects to me is a very different motion than what we as customers need to do around enterprise architecture. And I don't want to cross-wire the two because I'm a little bit more confused about why SAP all of a sudden is having this interest in technical architects and enterprise architects. To me, it sounds, and Josh and I got into this earlier this week, sounds like a new way to talk about pre-sales, right? And I don't know how a single enterprise architect from SAP can possibly comprehend and understand the enormity of the SAP product suite and juxtapose that and reconcile that against all the customers they have accountability and responsibility for. I don't know how that works, right? But I want to talk about enterprise architects inside of our customer base. They are essential to the future success of artificial intelligence, moving to a new clean core world. They have to understand this clearly and succinctly so that their enterprises make the right decisions, because making the wrong decisions is costly in time, quality, and of course, dollars.
I totally agree. And I think one of the reasons why this role is becoming, in my opinion, critically important, even more so than in the past, is because everything I've studied about AI indicates to me that there's such a divide between consumer AI and enterprise AI. So you talked about a chatbot never giving you a satisfying response. Well, on the consumer side, that's totally different because there's a lot of people that are having, I don't want to say adult, but romantic relationships and interactions with chatbots. They're people that are having friendly discussions with chatbots. Like there's all kinds of satisfying chatbot interactions on the consumer side. But the beauty of that setup, regardless of whether it's something that you would be interested in or I, is the fact that you don't have to tie that to a core set of data and precision output. It's more about being chatty and enjoying the time and, doing stuff like everyone can relate to when the tool first came out of like, give me ASUG's mission statement in the form of a Shakespearean sonnet. And it can do that, and that's super fun, whether it has any business value, I think we could probably debate that. So unless you're going to be reading a sonnet at Tech Connect, which I doubt. So
I will not.
Anyhow, so I think in the
Let
enterprise,
me compare you to a summer day. Yes.
Yeah. So in the enterprise context, it's all about customer specific data and customer specific results. And there's no one better suited for that than an enterprise architect to help design that kind of data architecture in a way that has integrity to that company and that company's compliance needs and everything else. And like you said, no one from SAP can come into every single company and understand that unique company's culture and how to make all of that work. And so I think this topic is super important, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what ASUG Tech Connect can deliver on this topic, because I think it's an important part of what's going to go down there. So
I'm in the process of finishing for ASUG News a big piece on the enterprise architect opportunity. Big. Cool. It's actually, it's sort of like a little too much in a way. But one of the things I'm doing at the end of it is really, kind of what is the call to action? And I want to sort of say this in this podcast. I think it's really worthwhile. It's going to be really important for customers to nurture the enterprise architect community inside their companies and find it, grow it, train it, retain it, make them happy. These resources are going to be super important. Every global SI has a call out for anybody with an enterprise architect background. They're going to hire them at good, incredibly expensive salaries. The membership of ASUG really has to, focus, I think, on also looking inward and making sure these resources are being captured and trained up and taken good care of, because you're going to need, just as you said, Geoff, you're going to need that inside view of your architecture that an outside consultant isn't going to be able to provide. So I'm sort of really excited about, some of the stuff I'm seeing at Tech Connect really does specifically say, hey, enterprise architects over here, let's talk to you. And I think that's going to be a very important effort inside companies as well to say, hey, let's gather our existing and prospective architect community inside and keep them up and running, because we're going to need them desperately over the next few years.
I took a picture yesterday from a customer who's making a presentation on AI, and they said this. They said, data is a food for AI. Take care of it. And I think that this is it's a simple sentence, but it's right at the core of this, right? And Jon, you pointed this out a few minutes ago. If you really want to get value from AI, it starts with data. And if you don't have the data, you're not going to get value from AI. And if your data is all over the place and it's contradictory and it doesn't make any sense, and it, X is Y and Y is Z and Z is A, and then it's never going to, and this idea that AI is going to invent answers based on data you don't have is largely permitting hallucinations to occur, and then therefore saying, I can really make bad decisions based on my AI outcome because it hallucinated and I'm not accountable for it, which is not true, right? We're supposed to be inventing and relying on AI to help us make better decisions, not worse ones. And the data model matters, and the people in the organization that have to be thinking about that data model and what it means is the enterprise architect.
Bingo. Okay, well, sorry, Josh, can you make it really fast, because I want to wrap this. So is there anything else you have to say? Or
No,
okay,
I'm
cool.
done.
Okay, cool. So for those of you who made it to the end, there is no door prize. Sorry. But I will say there is the banter, right? But feel free to get in touch with us if there's topics you want us to cover in our next roundup. And I am sure that we will revisit the enterprise architect discussion, probably post Tech Connect, because I think that's a potent one to flesh out a little further than we have today. So with that, I'm going to ask each of the guys to go, and I like this calls to action concept. So let's leave listeners with a couple of calls to action for the upcoming events they may be attending. For example, Josh, you and I will also be at SAP Spend Connect, and then I have a flurry of non-SAP events as well, and you have some other travels. So anyway, events coming up, including Tech Connect and other stuff. What are your calls to action for folks? And my calls to action are going to be, as an individual, as you consume this content, I would hope for you to find the right balance between your professional development and your corporate team needs, and find that right balance that I'm always struggling to find between curiosity of the really good stuff that's happening and the critical thinking that is really necessary right now, because sometimes every vendor, including SAP, goes over the top with some statements that I think need fleshing out. And a lot of times they can flesh them out, but keep in mind that critical thinking and find that right balance, and I think you'll be in good shape. Who's next?
Geoff, I anoint you.
Oh, thank you. Key takeaways. This environment is moving very fast, and the only way to stay on top of it, or even if you can, and some days I think I'm slipping, is to listen to these types of things and to engage and to show up at events, and not just to listen, but also to contribute back. And so, Jon, as you're talking about, where should SAP people spend their time? Go to Tech Connect in a couple weeks in West Palm Beach. Pay attention to what's being said at TechEd virtually. Engage inside your community. Connect, learn, and grow. This is essential. I learned so much more by listening to people talk about these things. And sometimes to me, you guys all know that I have a lot of energy, and it's very difficult for me to sit still for a long period of time. But I walk out of all of these conferences that I'm at, and I think I know a lot more than when I went in. And that's just slowing down long enough to listen to what others have to say.
And I like what you just said, Geoff, and I'll just add that I think, for customers coming into these conferences, whether it's, Spend Connect, which is very more domain specific, or Tech Connect, which is going to be very technology specific, really having both a solid sense of what you're looking for and kind of where you are and where you want to go. And then I would say also standing your ground. I mean, there's, when someone says to you, and particularly with someone in sort of a salesy kind of orientation, says, well, this thing is going to solve your problem, challenge it. Ask for the ROI analysis. Ask for the real data. Tell me the customer where this worked. Don't tell me about a proof of concept. I want the real deal, because I think separating the POC fantasy from the, working reality is going to be really important, because for most of us, and I'm putting my customer hat on, for most of us, we need to actually get the job done today. And, down the road, 2 years from now, 5 years from now is a nice fantasy, but there's a real business reality that needs to be dealt with now. So I would say stick to your ground in terms of keeping everyone grounded in reality, and ask for the numbers. Don't just go, oh yeah, this is cool.
Yeah, I think it would be really interesting. I love what you guys just said, and it'd be super interesting, instead of just looking at like, what did I learn at this event or this webinar or these series of events, who did I meet and deepen connections with that I can help in the future and that can help me, right? Like, not just what did I learn, but who did I connect with, and how can I take this forward? And also, how can I share what I've learned, right? That I think a lot of people think, well, there's all AI generated content. Well, we still crave human insight. And you're never too early in your journey to start sharing, whether it's on the ASUG site or, LinkedIn or wherever you feel like doing it, like start that journey, because it's amazing. Like, I think a lot of us met each other in the process of doing that, right? Like just sharing our thoughts and ideas was a great way to foster that. And I think if you look at it like that, you can guide yourself through these changes. I don't like your chances in isolation.
There you go. Good end point.
All right. Thumbs up. We're
Totally
out, guys.
agree.
Thanks. Till next
Thank
time.
you very much.
See you,
Thanks.
Later.
Good to see you all. Bye.